Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in. I talked about Dragon Age Veilguard a lot on this channel.
It's time to stop! It's time to stop, okay? No more! Where the are your parents?
And for good reason too. I was a big fan of Bioware, I saw a train wreck in the distance with this game, and instead of just yapping about it without knowing what I'm talking about, I put in over 100 hours and I covered the game in detail across multiple videos. And it was tiring too. The truth is, if I really wanted to have milked this for all that it had, I could have done it. And it was honestly probably dumb of me for not doing so, especially with a small channel, but I genuinely didn't want to. When I finished the game in late November, I remember being so tired of thinking about it, of watching footage, of sorting it into folders, and just talking about it that I delayed the final part of my review for a whole month, only releasing it in January. And every time that I've revisited a topic since then, whether it was to give a full overview of the controversy around it, or to respond to a developer who we will be touching on later in this video, or to respond to an IGN interview with an actress, I've always thought, okay, it's done, this is over, the Veilguard cope ends here, nobody's biting, nobody's believing this stuff, I can get it off my head now and move on, because surely the media is going to stop trying to push the same narrative. So now all that I've got to do is just a long overdue promise to my viewers that I would someday get back to the game to give an individual character analysis of each of the companions and their terrible personal quest lines. And this was because I didn't do this in the final review, as it would have increased the video from like 1 hour to 2 or more. I still plan on doing this, by the way. I haven't broken my promise, fellas, but admittedly it's been hard to get back in there, especially with so much good stuff around to play. But I'll get around to it eventually. But anyway, as it pertains to the media and their coverage of the game, every damn time that I thought that it was over, I get proven wrong, because somehow this game keeps coming back to haunt people, and every time it's so incredibly filled with copium, lies, contradictions and misrepresentations of the truth that it's frankly unbelievable. These people and the media outlets that often host them should keep a handy little book to take note of the delusional narratives that they're using to defend this game, because at this point we are at meme archive level, with them blaming an entity and then in another article a few weeks or months later blaming another entity while disproving their earlier claims, and then rinsing and repeating that process over and over again. So here's what we're going to do in this video. We're going to go through the latest batch of baloney, but it's going to be a long burn. I'm not just going to show you the stuff that some article claimed, I'm going to take you down memory lane, because so much of it is just, how do I put this? It's like whoever wrote this, plus Mark Dara himself, of course, the Bioware veteran who consulted for Veilguard, are living in another dimension entirely, right? It's not even that they're trying to rewrite history, it's like they're already living in a plane of existence where that history has been more than rewritten a dozen times over. And so if you're like me and you actually played the game and you remember previous articles, you covered them, previous interviews, etc., previous controversies, you're just blown away by the flip-flopping. So let's get in there. Hopefully this video won't get buried alongside every other upload of mine from August. If you wanna help with the algorithm, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments as we go along. So here we go. Bioware veteran Mark Dara shares his advice for the developers working on Mass Effect 5 as the studio goes all in on its sci-fi series. This advice relates to Bioware's fraught relationship with EA, something Dara had to navigate for years. Surprisingly, his advice is to scapegoat Dragon Age the Veilguard. Dara, who was a consultant on the Veilguard, says that the Mass Effect team could use the game's failure, at least in the eyes of EA. Oh brother, I'm sorry, but it's not just in the eyes of EA, this is in a lot of eyes. That there's a lot of eyes out there, let me tell you that right now, to get the resources and freedom it needs for its own game. He urges the developers to do this even if the scapegoating isn't quite accurate. no, it is accurate too. I know what they're doing here already. This is very deliberate. They're already coping. I understand that, but it's just not going to fly, man. You know, people still remember. Sometimes it looks like what they're trying to do here is speed up that narrative that sometimes is used for other older games where, you know, a few years go by and people just get together and go, you remember Game X? It really wasn't that bad and gamers just exaggerated. But that's not going to happen here. I mean, the game is barely a year old. Actually, it's not even a year old yet. So what are we doing here? His whole thing here is like they can try and scapegoat the game and pretend that it is bad, even though it totally isn't. But like, they can pretend, you know? They can kind of try and paint that picture to EA, even though clearly it is not true. I mean, of course, all the layoffs, the director getting yanked from the studio, all the writers being kicked out too, all of this means nothing. Clearly the game was terrific, but they could just pretend, you know, if they could just pretend, then maybe it'll work. Oh man, this is gonna be another rough cope session from Mark Dara, I can already tell, just like the last one a few months ago. And this is all for the purpose noted here, since it could help EA actually listen to the developers. Keep that in mind for later in the video, because in his mind the developers from Mass Effect should take the Dragon Age Veilguard failure and use it as a scapegoat to sort of finesse EA into doing what they want, but without admitting its mistakes. He continues, I do think this is less messy. To be frank, the Mass Effect team is going to be able to point to the Veilguard and say, we should steer away from some of these things because look at what happened. And as much as that stings, especially for the developers who worked hard to turn the Veilguard into something that could be shipped after EA kept interfering with its development. God damn, and the use of language here is so entertaining. The bar and the confidence is so low that they can't even muster anything further than a something that could be shipped when it comes to describing the Veilguard now, which is a huge difference from how they talked about the game just a few months ago. The problem though is that they're not doing this as an acknowledgement of Veilguard being a failure, a weak game with some of the most god-awful writing, directing and presentation I've seen in the series, let alone in the industry in general. They're doing this and using EA as a scapegoat to us, the public. Something that could be shipped after EA kept interfering with its developer. That's something I already debunked in the previous video. I'll link it in the top comment and the description in case you're interested in that full episode of nonsense, but I won't leave you guys hanging either, since I did say that we were going to go through relevant data in this video. Let's just finish the quote here and then we can jump to it. So, as much as it stings, Dara says the team should do it anyway. I would honestly encourage that team to scapegoat Veilguard as much as they need to get what they need from the organization, whether it's true or not. I'm gonna be real with you guys, this is pure pathetic cope and it's not the first time that this happens from this guy specifically. A few months ago he was mad at people criticizing the game and not feeling bad for the bad writers responsible for the bad writing having gotten laid off from Bioware. Totally not understanding what that actually is, which is not a celebration of people getting fired, but a celebration of accountability being taken by these huge companies that are so often untouchable, and the sense of relief and hope that the next game by Bioware, such as Mass Effect, will not have the same problems because of not having the same writers. At the end of the day, the harsh reality in the business is that you either get rid of people who do bad work or you're just setting up for the entire studio to be shut down, which has been a very sad fate for other studios and games that didn't get another chance, like what happened with Saints Row for example, but more on that in a bit, as it will be mentioned in the article too. It's been 10 months and this guy is still coping, unable to address reality and take responsibility also for his role as a consultant. Worse than that, him and these outlets are blatantly lying to people, and here's the thing. I'm all for blaming out-of-touch publishers. I'm no stranger to calling out EA even in this, because in EA's own statements, Veilguard failed because it was a single-player game rather than a live service game. Apparently, according to EA, what gamers want is roadmaps, microtransactions, and daily quests, which by the way totally bones out Mark Dara's narrative here as well. I mean, what is there to scapegoat? If EA thinks that the story, the gameplay and everything else was a banger, and the issue was it not being an online casino disguised as a video game, then why scapegoat anything?
Some people are really f***ing stupid.
But anyway, I guess that doesn't matter. I'm all for this kind of thing, but I hate this narrative of developers being infallible, being totally unable to make mistakes of this scale enough to tank a game, and all the blame just belongs to the publisher. I hate seeing publishers be the ones having to take the entire brunt of the blame, when I can also clearly see, playing some games like Veilguard, that there's individual shit that just sucks. That is just so terrible, just the content itself, like the goddamn writing was.
We have heard of your gifts. We wanted to meet you, to learn from you.
From me?
About the Titans, about our past.
You came here to meet me, to talk to me?
The fucking painter? No, the fucking doctor, you idiot!
And the articles and interviews like these don't acknowledge it at all. In fact, they go so hard on placing the blame on EA that it makes it sound like they want the writers that got fired rehired, as it was an unfair thing that happened to them, when we all know that that's just not true. But enough rambling and ranting, let's just get to the truth. The truth is, well, scratch that, there's many truths. For example, when it comes to EA having a share of the blame, it is true that EA got this project off on the wrong foot all the way back in 2015, 10 whole years ago. They started this game off as a live service. If you'll recall, this was that time when EA was being all edgy, trying to pretend like nobody wanted single-player games anymore. They really did, for a fact, start off in a disadvantaged position by making this the genre. Then, 1 year after the total failure that was Anthem, a live service game from Bioware that nobody asked for either, all people really wanted from them was the same concept, the same world, etc., but in an actually cool single-player RPG. Or, you know, for the live service to actually be good and rewarding, which Bioware was never able to get right. And by the way, Mark Dara here, the same guy from this article and interview, was Anthem's executive producer after Casey Hudson left. Obviously, the entire disaster of Anthem cannot be placed on him alone, but he's still a prime candidate because if you'll recall, it's not like the game had zero chance, it's not like it came out and died immediately. There were elements of it that people were interested in, but then the entire roadmap fell apart and they didn't deliver on promised content. Hell, at some point, they even had a saving grace come their way after launch in the form of a glitch in the game that was giving people really good loot. And this actually got people to head back to the game with more enthusiasm than before, because the game was just not rewarding in its original state. But then Bioware patched the goddamn thing out and never did anything about it. They literally had a glitch showing them the way to make the game more successful, more appealing, and they just ditched it. Now fellas, this would obviously not be a solution for all of this game's problems, but it was a damn nice bandage that could have held up until more content started coming out. But they learned nothing, they totally wasted the opportunity, they just patched the fun out of the game and abandoned it soon after. But oh my, look at me getting sidetracked again. So 1 year after this disaster, EA finally changed their mind about Veilguard being live service. They finally understood that it wasn't a good idea, probably just because of a fear of it ending up as much of a flop as Anthem, which is annoying in its own right because Dragon Age fans were already pissed off when they heard that the sequel is going to be a live service. It's amazing how these morons never listen to fan feedback. They need a game to crash and burn and fucking flop before they actually perp their ears up and go, oh, they don't like this even though they've been telling us for years now? Okay, I didn't know. How was I supposed to know? So in 2020, Veilguard shifts from live service back to where it belongs, single player, but apparently the developers were not allowed to start over from scratch, and instead, a lot of content was used regardless. And as far as we know, this is all there was when it comes to EA interference. When you say your game was doomed by interference, you make it sound like they were right there nagging you every step of the way, enforcing stuff into your game that you didn't want to put in. And this is just a total misrepresentation of what the the goddamn hell is going on here. And yes, it bothers me because I'm so tired of seeing this dude and others from the Veilguard team whining and throwing the blame around to everyone else around them. Oh, it's the gamers and the chuds. Oh, it's the content creators and the grifters. Oh, it's the publisher. There's even another article throwing blame on a Mass Effect team that was brought over to help Veilguard during its troubled development. It's on this article right here. Mass Effect devs reportedly rewrote parts of Dragon Age the Veilguard, with David Gator, another BioWare developer who, instead of taking accountability, likes to blame fans as well, claiming that while he worked at BioWare, the Dragon Age and Mass Effect teams did not get along at all and may as well have been two separate studios, that they had a decades-long rivalry and that it surely continued after he left in 2016. And I'm sorry, but right off the get-go, this sounds like some fanfiction shit. Then in the Bloomberg article, which was another Cope Festival by Jason Schreier, the game journalist who, at Veilguard's launch, was saying that Veilguard was actually a success in now deleted tweets. It said that EA tried to course correct Veilguard by bringing a second team on board, the fellas working on Mass Effect. And apparently this was a bitter pairing. The Mass Effect directors took control of the situation, looked at the shoddy job that the Dragon Age team had done, and apparently they scoffed at it. Oh, goodness gracious, what is this? Apparently this is how it went, I'm not even making it up. Going on to excluding the Dragon Age lead developers from their key meetings, where they would discuss overhauling, rewriting, or adding whole new scenes. Like, I'm sorry, but what the fuck is this? A high school drama? What am I reading here? The book adaptation of the High School Musical? The jocks of Mass Effect versus the theater kids of Dragon Age? When developers from Mass Effect and Dragon Age crossed paths in the lobby, did it look like those scenes from the Zoolander as well? Jesus Christ, man. And even if this was true, what's the problem? Here's the reality. If you fucked up your game so badly that you need a new team to come in and save you from yourself, why the hell would they include you in their meetings? Your ideas are useless. Your writers are shit. They literally screwed the pooch, so why invite you to add more red tape to discussions about how to remedy some things? I swear, man, it's the gamers' fault because we're chuds and whatever, then it's the content creators' fault because they're a bunch of terrible grifters and they're lying about the game and told people not to play this excellent, incredible game, then it's EA's fault because EA is bad, they've always been bad and they're the ones who set all of this in motion. Then in June, it was time to blame the gamers again because we didn't give the game a true chance, of course. Now it's also the Mass Effect team's fault because they came in and apparently they changed everything. The game was amazing. The game was amazing, but then the Mass Effect team came in, they looked at it, they scoffed. What is this? And they edited everything, maybe even maliciously. Maybe it was a setup, and maybe it is a corporate sabotage. And then the game turned to shit.
You are Greco the doctor?
No, I'm the fucking painter.
But anyway, guys, back to the main point, I guess. at the end of the day, you just can't take EA and pin this entire thing on them for having made this initially a live service project. There's no doubt about the fact that this was a bad decision from the start. However, take the story for example. I'm not even going to scrutinize over the terrible RPG elements when it comes to this, although I am bringing them back up later in this video because BioWare did too. That's the major problem here really, it's that now we have all of this whining and crying and whinging about how terrible the circumstances were, how cooked the game was from the start, and how it's all EA's fault, etc. But a few months ago, right before launch and then right shortly after launch, during the review times, and even after a few months, it was actually a triumph and an incredible game. A return to form. Remember how many times this was placed over there on reviews? So we'll touch back on this, but right now, let's just take the story, the characters, and the writing alone as an example here. Why would the game's genre interfere with that? There was a decision to take Solus and throw him overboard. A decision to shift the point of the sequel into more of a reboot, not just by removing focus from Solus, but also by erasing so much of the history and lore laid out by the recent games, especially the decisions made by players. This isn't something that you can blame on EA unless EA specifically told you to. This is just shit writing. Same with the characters. This game has some of the most cringe-worthy characters, dialogues, scenes, and personal quests that I've ever seen in any game.
Can you imagine me in a dress? I'd look stupider than I'd look stupid.
This isn't about the dress, is it?
No, it's... I don't know. She always says stuff like that. About how I dress, how I act.
And?
It feels... right. When she says I act more like a man. It feels... right. Why does it feel right?
Tosh, do you like being a woman?
Nobody likes being a woman.
Ah.
This is stupid. Forget I...
If something about being a woman is hurting you, I don't think it's stupid at all.
But what does it mean?
It could be about your mother's expectations, or about how it feels to be a woman and Canary. Or maybe it's being a woman, period.
How would knowing that help? It won't change anything.
Some
I'm
of my
non-binary.
friends in Minrathous talk about not feeling comfortable in their own skin. As a man, as a woman. I could see if they'd like to talk. Maybe what they say fits how you're feeling.
Yeah. Okay. And thanks. You do look really pretty.
With all due respect, what the fuck are you talking about?
Did EA make you do that? Were they the ones interfering here? Did they make a call to the studio like, hey Jenkins, I want these characters to be the epitome of cringe? No, they didn't, let's face it. This is what the writers could muster. This is what they could do. Actually, not what they could do. This is what they wanted to do. This is what they were proud of doing, as they expressed time and time again after launch. Writing, story, narrative decisions about the lore and world building plus scene presentation and direction doesn't get impacted by live service. Quest design, combat mechanics, progression, this stuff does, I'll give you that. But not these elements. And even in those cases, was the EA interference so bad that it couldn't be remedied? The shift back to single player was in 2020. They still ended up having 4 years of development. Now, some of them say that no, it was actually only 1.5 years, which is why they couldn't change anything, and then the game kept getting delayed. But if this is true, it must have been internally because we only have one documented report of a delay and one documented report of a date being set. One way or another, this is no excuse for the source material, like I said, all the story stuff, to end up being so bad. Which brings us to another issue. The source material for this initial live service game had no business being so bad. You can blame the gameplay, which a lot of fans complained about. It didn't feel like Dragon Age, it was missing depth in all things, and the combat was bogged down to just spamming shit while waiting for your ultimate to build up and avoiding red damage circles on the floor, then rinsing and repeating that for like 10 to 15 minutes on enemies with bloated HP bars. it really does genuinely look like live service combat design. As far as that goes, you could kind of put the blame on it, even though it still means that if the game had released in live service, it would have probably suffered an even bigger issue than Anthem did. You see, Anthem had a huge problem with rewarding the player, but when it came to the mechanics, people were happy enough with the gunplay and the Iron Man suit flight stuff. But Veilguard has a huge problem with the repetitiveness of the combat and the lack of depth. So how the hell were you supposed to make this live service and successful with that massive issue plaguing players since the start? And also, not to be that guy or anything, but the rewards were shite too. Unless this was also affected, but then again, how could it if it was being developed as a live service game? I mean, you know what I mean? Honestly, I'm asking too many questions already that should have been Mr. Matty asking to Mark Terra in that interview instead of that softball shit, which pretty much means that Mark Terra probably would just disconnect the call and never talk to me again, but anyway, at least I would have asked. While you can maybe excuse some gameplay related things, there were narrative and conceptual decisions that were made right from the get-go that were terrible. And I really just wish that I could hear Mark Terra's excuses for them, because it really looks like there aren't any. Not for those, no matter how much people try to wiggle around and find one. And the funniest thing is, if you're following this game and it's pressed since before launch already, you'd also see that even when it comes to the gameplay department, there's a lot that cannot be excused because they literally bragged about how amazing the new systems are, and how it was made on purpose to be this amazing and cool. Here's a direct quote from this guy saying that Dragon Age Veilguard is actually the first Dragon Age game that is actually fun to play when it comes to the combat. Apparently the others sucked massive dong when it came to this, and these yahoos decided to overhaul that. So which is it? Is this game a miracle that managed to be released at all? A game that needed to be scrapped from the get-go and started over? Suffering from irreparable damage done by EA interference and a tight grip on the developers preventing them from doing what they really wanted? Or is this the most fun Dragon Age game that they intended to make? You can't just say random shit according to which way the wind blows. You can't have the game come out and you're seeing journos going, "Oh man, 10 out of 10, return to form," and so you're like, "Oh yeah, of course, I mean, I know, right? Hey, it is what it is. These are the fruits of our labor and stuff, you know, like, yeah, I mean, this is totally intended, you know, we be working hard and all that, you know what I'm saying, you know, we wanted to make this a true return to form, a true return to what Bioware is good at, nah, I mean, you know, and we wanted this to be the most fun and most gripping and the mostest of all the games, really, and so here it is. Enjoy it." And then after the mask falls off, the real numbers get revealed, the parent company comes out and says it's a failure, sends the director packing, fires a bunch of people, including the entire writing staff, and now you go, "Oh man, oh shit dude, you know, this is actually terrible, yes, and we knew it was terrible, I mean, of course, I mean, what am I talking about here? You know, it's actually not really terrible though, you know, but feel free to say that it is terrible and use it as a scapegoat." The truth is really that this is amazing, sort of, you know what I mean? But not really, like, don't get me wrong, let me explain this better. This is actually the best game ever, yeah? But some things are just, they didn't get done so well, you know what I mean? And that's all because of the gamer, I mean, not the gamer, sorry, it's actually because of Asmongold, no, sorry, what I'm trying to say here, it's that it's actually because of the Mass Effect team. Oh, sorry, actually, no, what I mean is, this time for realsies now, it's actually because of EA, yeah, that's it. Our game is incredible, but every part that is not incredible, which, it doesn't matter how much of it is, but the point is, the parts that are bad are because of EA, you know? They made us make the game like this, you know? They came in, they said, "Hey, make the game online," and then they gave us no time to make it single player, you know? And so, like, you know, also the writing, it's all EA's fault. everything is, but again, the game isn't bad at all. I'm just saying it is as a disguise, you know what I mean? Like, you gotta understand that this is big brain stuff. I'm just saying it is as a little sneaky lie so that the Mass Effect developers can use it as a scapegoat, you know what I mean? Like, this is, you have to understand, in the industry, in the business, we call this,
the reason why? You've just destroyed
because other than that, the game is actually amazing. It's a product that I'm very proud of. The whole team is really, which obviously means that EA is amazing. They're clearly the best publisher on the planet because it's truly because of It's truly because of them and their constant interference that this game turned out to be the amazing masterpiece that I am so proud of right now, that this game truly is, because really it is. It's not bad, it's just bad. Remember guys, it's only bad as a little diversion. Just a little diversion. I'm just saying it's just a little diversion because I don't want what happened with Veilguard to happen again with Mass Effect. You know what I mean? I want Mass Effect to be successful, which means that they should do exactly what we did, of course, because our game was also successful. It's the best game. This is a great video game, but not really, because it's a scapegoat. Oh, I got it. I want Mass Effect to be even better, right? Even better. So I'm saying that they should use my game as a scapegoat so that they can make theirs even better with more stuff and all that. Yeah, that's it. And so anyway, I really need to go get some water right about now, so I'll see you guys on the next softball interview. What the fuck is going on here, guys? I know I troll a lot, but seriously, look at these direct quotes. In terms of the actual game as you're seeing it now, as it's shaped today, I would say 4 years. That's when everything just started to come together and you're like, oh yeah, yep, this is what we want. This is what we need for this Dragon Age game. Number 2, Appler said that many of the Bioware team joined because they specialized in solo adventures, and as a result they weren't able to deliver their best with Anthem. For me and for the team, the biggest lesson was to know what you're good at and then double down on it. Another one, Anthem taught Bioware it should focus on what it's good at. A lot of the people on this team came here to build a story-focused single-player RPG. Number 3 or 4, goddamn, it's always exciting to come out with a new game. The biggest thing about the Veilguard is that there's a lot of stuff in this game, decisions that we made, new characters that we created. And funny enough, I know I'm the creative director, but the thing I'm most stressed about is the writing side of things. Like, if people don't like the writing or the characters that I created, there's something deeply personal about that. Whoops! Then there was this whole ass interview here on IGN with the director, Corinne Bush, and the creative director, John Appler, and this shit is just packed with quotes of these dudes, plus the IGN lady over here just laughing, having a blast, having a great time, celebrating all the cool things in the game, talking about all of the saucy stuff, all of the creative decisions that went into certain scenes that they made. You know, they're just so proud of their fucking game all over this interview, bro. All the pride they feel for it, for what they created and shit. There's no shortage of articles and reviews written at the time glazing the damn game, calling it a return to form, a triumph, a project that they're proud of, something that they truly wanted to create. Hell, there's even this article here in December that could not stop idolizing the director of the game and the creative process behind Veilguard, and how this director was just getting started and we have so much more down the road for Bioware. And all of it just a few days or a couple of weeks before it was announced that she was packing up and leaving Bioware, and about a month before the entire writing team got shit-canned. You can't make this up, man. And then here we are reading all these recent articles and interviews like this one with Dara talking about the game in a completely different tone. Suddenly you're no longer a phobe this or a phobe that if you criticize the game. Suddenly criticizing the game is actually normal and to some extent even encouraged, because the flaws finally exist. Finally they're acknowledging them. It's just that we have to pin the blame on anything else other than the developers. We gotta pin the whole thing on EA, or if you want you can do like you can split it. You can split the blame in a little bit for EA, a little bit for the gamers, a little bit for the content creators, a little bit for the devious Mass Effect team that came in to help. It's just so ridiculous, dude. You see, saying anything at all like this just a couple of months ago, basically before the Jason Schreier article came out, was strictly forbidden. I mean, again, as I said in a previous video, you wouldn't go to jail if you did, at least not yet, but if it was... But it was an optics disaster. It would place you into a box that you may not even know exists. It'd place you in the grifter chud box for criticizing this game. Meanwhile now, look at these articles. Mark Dara says Veilguard might have been better if Bioware shut the project down completely. Dragon Age developers say finishing the Veilguard was a miracle. Development nightmare. Inside the Dragon Age debacle that gutted EA's Bioware studio, the latest game went through 10 years of development turmoil. Dragon Age the Veilguard's major decisions were hastily added.
Bruh, look at this dude. Wait till you see the... No. Look at the top of his head. Look at his lips.
I mean, what the fuck happened, fellas? I thought this was a resounding success. I thought this was the game the team dreamed to make. I thought this was the project the team was incredibly proud of. I thought it was the return to form that Bioware needed. Fuck, some jackasses in the media even wrote in their reviews that this was better than Mass Effect 2. So what the hell is this? What kind of clown show are we living in, where developers and games media think that they can spend months just saying something, lying to people, doubling down on it, insulting them, and then just flip the script months later and act as if they didn't, act as if this has always been the narrative, it's always been like this, fellas. It's such an interesting phenomenon. Yeah, like, it's so ridiculous, but I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it makes for great content, as some of the channels I enjoy watching sometimes like to say, it's a great day for the unemployed. Well, unless they're former Veilguard developers, of course. In that case, it's a bit more of a sensitive situation. But it's okay, because it's a great segue into the next thing. So in the next part of the article, this is what it says. Of course, this isn't Tara himself scapegoating the Veilguard. Not only did he consult on the game, but he also bigged it up prior to launch. True. Again, just reiterating, this guy even put the other games down just to, big this one up. Now I know that if you're on the road to releasing a new game, you don't want to kind of cripple your chances by talking shit about your own game. This is 100% the kind of response that I would get in the comments for calling out the lying and hypocrisy and swindling of spending months before launch hyping this game up, when apparently in reality it was a disgusting, twisted and mangled mess, irreparably damaged by the publisher, that is a miracle that it is even coming out in the first place. I know that I would get comments like, what are you, a dumbass? They're not going to speak ill of their own game, but then what's the alternative like? Lie to everyone? Swindle them out of their fucking money? Demand those $70 at launch? 80 for many people already with tax, paying through digital marketplaces or big retailers in their own countries? And then let people get pissed off as they're playing this mess of dogshit writing and depressive RPG mechanics, and then when those people come out online and they complain, get the media and some developers to start demonizing them and insulting them for daring to have the wrong opinions about the game? Is that the fucking alternative? Because I'm sorry, but if that's the alternative, then they can all eat my entire ass. The whole thing. This is ridiculous and it shouldn't be expected or acceptable at all. If you can't shit-talk your own game and be real about the broken product that you have in your hands, then the least that you can do is what happened with Cyberpunk 2077. Just shut the fuck up about the game, apologize, offer refunds, and get back to work to make it better. Oh, what's that? You can't because EA doesn't let you? Fine, then we will also blame EA for it, just like people still to this day blame EA for not allowing the team behind Mass Effect Andromeda to continue fixing the game and release the Quarry and Arc DLC. Simple. we're not retarded. We know where to, focus our criticism. The fact that this journalism outlet doesn't call out this blatant anti-consumer practice and instead is using this narrative to paint Mark Darrah as some kind of hero and staunch defender overprotecting a bad game he knew was caked in problems just goes to show what side these outlets are on. They're on the side of the goddamn corporation. Oh, they may take a few potshots at EA now because it's safe to do so, the narrative has morphed, but all they did and are still doing in the end is defending EA's property. But let's continue. Not only did he consult on the game, but he also bigged it up prior to launch and defended the developers from the abuse they received. This is what I wanted to focus on this topic. This narrative of abuse. What this is referring to is what happened back in February where he released a video titled "Your $70 Does Not Buy You Cruelty." It was covered by just about every gaming outlet as well, because of course it was, and what it came down to was that he was calling out the cruelty, according to him, of fans celebrating the layoffs that had hit Bioware at the time. He would go on to say that gamers were crossing a line and they were probably attacking the wrong people anyway, because apparently we didn't even know the circumstances that resulted in the thing that we were mad about to begin with. In his mind, when people were celebrating the layoffs, he believed that we were crossing lines, being cruel, and we should have more grace for other human beings. This didn't go well at all for Mark. He actually ended up crashing the fuck out in his own comment sections because people rightfully brought up all the insults and crap that they had to endure by current and ex-Bioware developers themselves who didn't like the criticism towards character designs and terrible writing from scenes that had leaked just shortly before launch. Like the one about the cookies, the non-binary scene as well, etc. They were rightfully asking if Mark was going to call that shit out as well. Because if you don't want people to be hostile to you, then you shouldn't be hostile to them in the first place. And these developers were generalizing shit like crazy at the time. All it took was a complaint about those things and they would call you a fucking tourist while coping together in their blue sky posts. But honestly, I don't even care about that specifically. That's just some lore for you guys who may have forgotten how ridiculous his comment section got with him crashing out and then copy-pasting his replies. The main thing I want to focus on here is the total misconception from Mark Darrah and these journalists calling this abuse and cruelty. The truth is that yes, people celebrated when those layoffs happened, but the reason why they did wasn't because they were celebrating the goddamn concept of humans losing their jobs and being out on the street. This is a ridiculous notion that has nothing to do with it at all. It's being used as a straw man and as emotional manipulation. The reason why people celebrated was because there was an acknowledgement of a mistake, an acknowledgement of a problem with that game, and some accountability being taken in the form of firing, for example, the freaking writing team who did such a piss poor job that, as we already established, is totally inexcusable even if you bring up the shift from live service to single player. Accountability is a very rare thing in the games industry. There's a lot of higher-ups in positions of power calling very bad shots in their companies. I always like to bring this one up as an example because it's such a blatant and easy one to point out, which is one of the morons at Warner Bros. Games looking at the resounding success of Hogwarts Legacy, 22 million copies sold as a single-player game, and the utter failure of Soy Squad Kill the Justice League as a live service game, and then making the decision to double down on live service games, including a desire to make the sequel to Hogwarts Legacy an online game. This is a perfectly distilled example of games industry retardation. You couldn't get a more polished and perfect example of this even if you dove deep into the minds of Erebor. This right here is the goddamn Arkenstone of terrible out-of-touch decision making from executives in this cursed industry. So when we get to see some goddamn accountability, it feels pretty damn good. It's an acknowledgement of failure after months of telling us that no, Veilguard had actually been a great success and we were all just a bunch of bigots. See, that's the kind of shit that Mark Darrah doesn't think about. He only gives a shit about his own little side of the narrative. And then he comes out with videos like that, trying to preach at people while getting the whole thing wrong. And you know what else? It's not just accountability either, it's relief and hope that the next next Bioware project won't be as bad, because those writers that created such terrible characters and wrote such dogshit dialogue and ruined so much Dragon Age lore are not going to be around to fuck up the next Mass Effect game. Even though in the end it didn't even matter that much anyway, because true accountability was still not had. I mean, for example, the director of Veilguard ended up moving from Bioware to Wizards of the Coast directly, essentially failing upwards. And this wasn't the only situation. There's been reports of writers from Veilguard landing on PlayStation exclusive studios like Sucker Punch, potentially even doing some work on Ghost of Yote. So once again, failing upwards. So honestly, at the end of the day, this didn't even matter. Like, why are we crying about this? Where's the abuse? Like, there's way more people that got fired from Bioware, a lot of whom I don't even know the names and positions of. They got like 100 people that got fired from the studio, and the most fucked up part of it is that there's likely some people there that got fired and shouldn't have been. People who did their jobs perfectly and according to the letter, and who bear no fault at all in the most important creative and writing decisions made for Veilguard that ruined it. And they might still be unemployed right now, while the actual ones to blame for this fucking stinker of a game, like the writers, landed cushy jobs somewhere else because they were treated like victims. And now they are elsewhere, ready to potentially fuck up some more games with their totally out of touch, ideologically captured bullshit writing in big budget AAA projects that can't fail because of how much money is invested into them, resulting in potentially even more innocent people ending up fired in future mass layoffs like the ones we're seeing in so many studios, even in giant ones like Xbox Studios, because of the terrible fucking work that writers like these do, and that this industry refuses to acknowledge as content that does not appeal to a major audience, and that honestly just results in turning people away with a massive sense of fatigue for weak, aimless dogshit writing devoid of passion, devoid of energy, devoid of personality, devoid of impact, honestly devoid of talent and skill. And Mark Darrah's whole narrative of us not knowing what we're talking about is even more insulting. Honestly, like, who do you think we are? Morons who can't read? What is it now? We can't look at directors and understand what they do? We can't play the game, notice all the god-awful dialogue, and assess that the ones to blame are writers who write the damn dialogue? Nobody was over here blaming the fucking janitors at Bioware over the character designs, for example, so what the hell is he talking about? All this is what all of these narratives have been about since February, removing the blame entirely from the developers and placing it on EA's lap. Well, if the fucking writers aren't responsible for the writing that was done in the game, then what the hell are they doing at the studio? Like, this argument is even worse if it comes to protecting these writers. It just makes it look like an even more plausible decision to fire them because apparently they're not doing anything at the studio. They're just drinking coffee, eating donuts, and exchanging pronouns. At the end of the day, I understand having empathy for people who got fired, just as a normal thing that everyone would get and understand from going through the same thing or having had that happen to their parents growing up or some family members. You know, it sucks. It's bad. Real bad. But none of that has anything to do with what happened. A studio fucked up a game, then people got fired and displaced for it. That's it. Like the director and the writers who were responsible for a lot of those issues. That, plus all the gaslighting that the media and some developers did for months, resulted in a big celebration when finally reality hit them, as we knew that it would eventually. Because at the end of the day, it's all very nice and very pretty, and very wholesome to be all cute, with flowers in our hair, being kind and lovely to one another, praising each other, and all of that lovely cutesy-tootsy stuff. But the fact is, the game sucked. And if you suck at making games, then you can't be making games, especially not at this budget level. It just is what it is. Either you gotta find a niche market to sell your garbage in a manner that won't be too prejudicial if you only get a few sales, or you gotta go. One way or another, we cannot expect companies to keep you on board over cutesy-tootsy bullshit because games have to make money, and clearly there was something biblically wrong with Veilguard. And as I said in my video talking about this at the time, if you know of more deserving higher-ups in Bioware and EA that paved the way for the game to be as bad as it was, who influenced these bad decisions that were made in regards to the story, who forced the writers to write cringe unlike anyone had ever seen before, then speak out and join us. Because we are all about getting these higher-ups to take accountability and lose their jobs before they fuck up another franchise. However, if you've got nothing to point out, and these are just your decisions, your direction that you took with your game, as we know they are because that's what you guys reported in multiple interviews and articles like the ones I just showed a few minutes ago, then I'm sorry, but what are we doing here? What's the solution exactly? Like what were you asking for? What are you talking about? So let's get to the worst part of all this. Back in the article, they finish it up with, however, given that Tara and others from Bioware have repeatedly said that EA is difficult to work with and struggles to grasp what gamers want from RPGs, by the way, neither does Mark Tara and the entire Bioware team behind Veilguard. Just saying. Again, EA didn't show up and told them to turn this into modern-day Californian cringe. They did that themselves. This might be the only way to get the higher-ups to understand. As Dara himself says elsewhere in the same interview, EA hates failure. So if the Mass Effect team can promise to avoid that if they're allowed to stick to their strengths, that could help Mass Effect. Unfortunately, the Dragon Age team was not granted that luxury until it was too late to course correct. Yeah, true, I mean 4 years to develop a game is clearly not enough. Where have we ever heard of a video game being developed in 4 years? I mean, that's just crazy. And 9 years to write a good story and characters? Well, that's even crazier. I mean, we need at least 2 decades minimum to ensure well-written characters and stories. Clearly, EA totally railroaded this poor team, man. I mean, it's just crazy work right here, you know what I mean? Like, the true victims of circumstantial capitalism. The Veilguard had to be made from the bones of a scrapped multiplayer Dragon Age game that pretty much no one wanted. True. Dara has also said that EA wouldn't even greenlight remasters or remakes of the first 3 Dragon Age games, so it doesn't seem that the publisher ever had much faith in the fantasy series. And that's it. That's how the article ends, in a full batch of copium that is once again blindly demonizing EA for all the wrong reasons. EA had a solid stance against remasters across the board. This wasn't just because of Dragon Age. This just sounds like more copium. People were shitting themselves hoping for a remaster of Need for Speed Underground 2, especially during that time where the Need for Speed series was going through an identity crisis. It didn't happen. People were craving remasters of the Dead Space games, they didn't happen. People wanted a remaster of Mirror's Edge, it didn't happen. For years, people wanted a remaster of Mass Effect Trilogy. This didn't happen earlier either. There is a near endless supply of really good older EA games that people wanted remastered, but that we never got because EA just had a hard line against doing it no matter what game it was. Hell, people even wanted Battlefront 2 remastered after how disappointing and lacking in content the 2015 game was. I had to buy a second-hand Xbox 360 in 2018 or so just to be able to replay Mirror's Edge and Mass Effect because these assholes were just against remastering and there was no word on any of them happening at all. They had even made statements back then saying that they were focused on innovating and making new stuff instead of cashing in on older stuff. Of course, this was all just an excuse to not say we cannot monetize old games, so we would rather make new live services and cake them with loot boxes. But anyway, the fact remains that this isn't really a bias against Dragon Age. Again, you're not special victims, okay? It's just a hardline stance from EA in not wanting to remaster anything. Then, later, something changed, way down the line, and in more ways than one. EA stopped being such an asshole about single-player games and started greenlighting some of them like Jedi Fallen Order, and they also allowed a few old revivals like the Mass Effect Trilogy, which was an obvious W, plus a remake of Dead Space, that they once again abandoned too. Dead Space 2 had a similar treatment planned, and now it's just cancelled. Dead Space has once again been killed off by EA for the second goddamn time. So I would just like to take the time right now to thank EA. Thank you very much. Thanks again. thank you, you son of a bitch. So they remain very cautious and unwilling to dive into many more remasters. It just is what it is with them. Make no mistake, EA is a garbage company, always was, always will be, but I find it nasty to be manipulating shit just to pin everything on them. It's not even because I have any sense of camaraderie towards EA, I really don't. It's just that when you have a problem and you don't specify the problem as it is and you just pin it on something else, you're escaping accountability and letting the problem foster and remain at the company for more releases to come. And that's the goddamn problem here. Like, the worst part of all this, to me personally, is this entire mentality of dishonestly scapegoating a game just to be able to manipulate the publisher into giving them what they want. This is not the mentality that you should have. The mentality to have here is to actually acknowledge the problems that Veilguard had. Acknowledge and admit the shit that the game was. Identify its problems clearly. Identify the disconnect with the franchise and brand that it was supposed to be representing. Identify the massive disconnect with their audience and the gaming scene in general, and then actually do better in the next project instead of just playing pretend so that big bad EA doesn't come down and interfere with the development. The only thing to be fearful of EA here is them wanting to take Mass Effect and make it a live service thing. This is an instant nail in the coffin, but that aside, when it comes to the setting of the game, when it comes to the story to be written, the characters that they're going to create, the quest design, the presentation, the direction of scenes, the very goddamn art style of the visuals, which Veilguard's was hideous, the atmosphere and the vibe of the story they're going to be making, of the locations that we're going to be visiting, the amount of work they put into the RPG mechanics, etc. All of this stuff is completely outside of EA's own field. This is up to the developers, and if they're just doing what Mark Dipshit is suggesting here, where they just kinda pretend to scapegoat Veilguard, because actually it was so good. Like, oh my god guys, it was so good. Like, the game was really just for real. It was ahead of its time. Truly a gem, a return to form for Bioware. So good. Only to just be able to have EA what? Look at them and trust them not to screw up the same way, while in reality they're just lying and learning nothing? This is useless. You may as well just give up already if this is a mentality going into the project. You may as well just give up and go make Anthem 2, Return of the Roadmap. Mark Terra has to seriously let that ego come down. He needs to get an ego check big time. Like, his game was terrible. It just is what it is. Like, how can he still be coping about this? This game was so bad that you can get the gist of how fucked up the experience is going to be just a few hours into it, and you don't even need to talk about any mechanic stuff or anything. You just need to talk about the writing and the story. I'll never forget when those dragon attacks happened and we pick a city to go defend. I went to Minrathous, and then I get there and a blighted dragon shows up alongside this elven god, one of the two ultra-powerful, ultra-evil tyrannical gods that the game had so far presented as impossible challenges that the player does not stand a chance against, because even Solus, a god himself, took 1,000 years to imprison. That's how big the power scaling is supposed to be between your mortal character and these gods. And that's fine, that's actually a good thing for the stakes. The problem is what happens next. So there you are, and this ugly ass tentacle god shows up, and there's this thing that she and the other evil tyrannical god really need. It's a unique lyrium dagger, very rare, and you have one because it belonged to Solus. They need this dagger in order to complete a vital ritual. It's their primary goal in the entire game, and your dumbass character actually shows the dagger to the god. She sees it and demands that you give it to her, but you go, nah, screw you, bruh, and so she's like, oh, you're dead, bro, you're so dead, oh man, you're so dead. But she just stands back and watches us fight a blighted dragon instead of just finishing us off in like 3 seconds, because not only is she immensely powerful, but at that point in the story, she's also completely invulnerable. She can't even be harmed because her soul or whatever is bound by blood to an archdemon, which is nowhere near there. Unless the archdemon is dead, she can't be killed, not even by a fluke of luck. She literally has no reason to be afraid of anything, and she has the one object that she desperately needs most in this world right in front of her, ready for the taking. But a few minutes of whacking the same dragon fight that you're going to have throughout the entire game, by the way, she literally gets bored of watching us and instead of coming down and finishing us off in 3 seconds and taking her dagger with her, or at the very least knocking us out for the sake of plot armor and taking her dagger with her, she just up and fucking leaves.
We have toyed with these morsels long enough. Your strength has needed elsewhere. Hear my voice and return.
It's gone, but it's wounded.
What are you, fucking stupid?
No, really, she goes away. The fucking writers just up and forgot how important that dagger was, how powerful the evil gods are, and they also forgot common fucking sense by making us show her the dagger and then making her not take the dagger. It just turned that scene into a fucking clown show that made no sense. So please, will Mark Darrah please explain to me whose fault this is? And by the way, this isn't unique. Like, this isn't a small thing that happens once and I'm nitpicking. This kind of issue happens constantly, both in the main story and its important side quests, like the companion personal quests. This is a constant thing. I got videos going over all of it. So whose fault is it? And when Tosh is being the most obnoxious, immersion-breaking, cringe-worthy-ass character in the history of gaming, whose fault is that too? Is it EA? Did EA tell you guys to do that? Honestly, the only fault EA has in any of this, if anything, was to not have a harsher hand on top of the team making this game. To not have supervised it better with someone who would see these things in the script, or listening in on meetings and hearing it being suggested and immediately stopping them like, hey, excuse me, what are you guys doing? This is terrible. Fuck no. Rewrite it. What are you guys thinking? What do you think this is? Disneyland? That's the only fault that I can think of that can be imparted on EA. Wasting hundreds of millions of dollars making Veilguard without even seeing the garbage that they were about to put out. Even if the publisher had let these people cook without that whole live service and then switched to a single player issue, they would have still had this piss poor story, characters, and lore. And that's still unacceptable. Maybe the game would be a bit better mechanically because of the gameplay, hopefully. I mean, who knows, because at the end of the day, again, Mark Darrah saw this combat system and went, finally a Dragon Age game that is actually fun to play. Which is ironic. I mean, David Gator called us tourists for criticizing Veilguard. Meanwhile, we have the Bioware Veteran over here saying that the previous Dragon Age game's RPG-heavy combat systems were boring while praising this god-awful whack-a-mole simulator. Like, come on, man, give me a break. But hey, I better shut the video down anyway before I go too far. I don't particularly care about this matter as much anymore. I still want to call out BS like this because I don't like seeing people using the biased, unethical ass media to propagate lies, to rewrite history. But I don't have a particular grudge against anyone, especially not in the dev teams. Like, it just is what it is. We're not that far from this game being a whole year old. I've moved on, and for the most part so has the internet. The internet just doesn't like when they're being lied to. I frankly don't even understand why this guy keeps coping and going on interviews and giving statements to media on Veilguard, ending up either lying about everything he's saying now or confirming how much of a goddamn liar him and everyone else was just a few months ago for over a year now. Pretty much since the marketing for Veilguard picked up momentum after the Summer Games Fest of 2024. It's just over, man. You racked up another L. Anthem and now Veilguard. It just is what it is. If you don't find yourself responsible from a business sense, explain that. If you find yourself cheated by EA, explain that. If you want to expose palpable details of EA's interference, bungling up everything and forcing all the terrible content in Veilguard to exist, do that. But when you come out, and you can't even admit how much of a failure the game was, and you can't even admit how shitty the writing was, a problem completely separate from any interference or genre choices, and again, not just any problem, but a really big issue with Veilguard specifically, like a big point of contention from fans, then you just can't really be taken seriously, and you kinda just look like a dude who can't let go. And Mr. Matty, Really? No pressure applied in the interview, no hard questions asked, no checking the guy on actual facts. Like, I get it, this probably went through some checks and balances before the call was even made, potentially with a list of questions that would be asked already sent to Maddie, and a list of things that he wasn't supposed to mention, or the interview would just be off and the guy would just leave. Again, I get it. It is what it is in the business of media. You either play by their rules and you get access to them for content like this, or you get blacklisted, which Maddie almost got last year for being the source of the leaked scenes before launch. But still, really? I mean, what was the point of this interview? A joint cope session? An avenue for Mark Darrow to keep trying to establish this new narrative of perpetual victims who had no power whatsoever over how the game turned out? Give me a break too, man. But anyway, I guess that's about it from me on this one. Thank you all very much for watching, especially if you made it this far, like damn. If you enjoyed the video, a like would be much appreciated, and hey, why not subscribe? Hope to see you guys on the next one. We're going to be going through some fresh Assassin's Creed Shadows Scopium, so I will see you then. Take care.